welcome to Morning Vibes with Dr. Jerry the First, episode 159. Today, Monday, the 19th day of February, 2018. My name's Dr. Jerry the First Oguzie, and today we are discussing the difference between letting go and running away. This is a true life story of a lady who was deeply hurt in her adolescent stage and who, instead of letting go of the hurt and pain, decided to run away from the hurt. I am retelling the story in her own words. I do hope that this story would resonate with you if you are in the same exact situation where you have allowed yourself to run away from any hurts of the past instead of resolving them and letting them go. Here it starts. It took me almost 20 years to realize that running away from ourselves isn't the same thing as letting go. That realization, as with so many others, came at a time when I was at one of my lowest points. The day everything changed began as one of the worst of my life. I was struggling with the breakup of a long-term relationship. We'd been due to move in together when I discovered he'd betrayed my trust so badly that remaining in a relationship with him was quite impossible. I was working long hours in a job I had grown to hate, and I was exhausted. I was barely sleeping, and when I did, it was the kind of nightmare-filled, fitful sleep that took forever to return from. I would wake up each morning feeling as though I had been in a battle as I slept. My fatigue was so overwhelming that I could barely manage to keep my house clean and parent my son. I was beat up, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. My son was staying with his grandmother for the weekend, and once I no longer had to hold it together for him, the floodgates opened. It was more than the loss of the man I believed I could spend the rest of my life with. It was the knowledge that my life had become passionless across the board. I wanted to live a creative life to sustain myself and my son via spiritual and creative expression, but I felt blocked at every turn, and I could no longer hold in my grief and desolation. I spent hours wandering from room to room in my silent house. Every now and then, I would curl up on the floor and hurl uncontrollably. Eventually, I couldn't cry any longer, and I wrapped myself in my duvet and put videos on autoplay, hoping to distract myself into numbness. That's when it happened. I was half listening to a talk by the mathematician Edward Frankel. I had heard it before and enjoyed it, but this time something he said utterly gut-punched me. He said, "Do you leave your debts on the battlefield of life? Or do you have the strength and courage to give them your love and bring them back?" And that was when I knew Edward Frankel and I had something in common. We both knew something about dying. Frankel described the time in his life he had only recently begun to understand. It was a moment when he was 16 and he was refused a place at a university in Russia because of his Jewish heritage. Despite going on to become widely successful in his field, he spent years disconnected with that 16-year-old adolescent inside of him, to the pain of that moment when his dreams were crushed. As I listened, suddenly she was there again, the girl I had tried to forget, the girl I had left on my own battlefield. I had spent years training as a contemporary dancer. I won scholarships and top roles in performances as well as competitions in choreography. I was young, talented, passionate, and obsessed. One dance school called me more than others, and I dreamed of finishing my training there. The day of the audition, on my 17th birthday, I traveled to that dance floor, floating on a wave of excitement, nerves, and a sense of rightness, of knowing this was exactly where I needed to be. The process was emotionally brutal. Only 5 people out of a cohort of over 40 were called to the next stage after doing group classes and individual solos. The rest were told to go home as they'd been unsuccessful. I was one of the 5. I waited in the corridor for my physical exam and interview. The instructor told us to relax. We'd passed the dance part of the audition, and now it was just wrapping up the formalities. We talked about what it would be in September when we started. I went home and slept in a kind of peaceful joy, knowing my dreams were about to come true. 3 days passed and the letter arrived. I began to tear it open, barely registering the fact that it didn't look quite right. It wasn't a thick envelope stuffed full of information about costs, equipment, and places to live. This envelope was small and thin, and when I opened it, inside was a letter that simply said, "They regretted to inform me I had been unsuccessful." And that was the day a part of me died. She stayed dead for a very long time. I wasn't as strong as Edward Frankel, who continued with math. I know nothing about his home life, but mine at the time was awful. Layers of trauma from a close relative's mental health issues were taking their toll. I had witnessed multiple suicide attempts, and holding it together for my mother, who was struggling to cope, had turned into my psyche. Dance had been my refuge from all that. The one thing that never let me down. The one thing I trusted, believed in, and knew that everything I had, I would do with my life. The shock of the rejection floored me. I didn't know what to do. I cried. I did cry. But then, I ran away. I wasn't strong enough to pick myself up and audition again the next year. Instead, I ran away. I ran to an older, abusive boyfriend. I ran to the university instead of the dance school. I ran to drugs. I ran to self-harm that lasted right up until the day I became a mother. That day, almost 20 years later, as I listened to Edward Frankel's words, I realized that at age 36, I was still running. Part of me had died that day. The part of me that was filled with creative passion and obsession. The part of me that felt a spiritual flow and anchor so deep there were no words to describe it. I spent years putting a band-aid on the pain. I busied myself with little creative projects, even danced a bit as a hobby. I told myself it was okay and had to let her go. Let go of the passion I once felt, the sense of rightness, and shorty. But I was kidding myself. I hadn't been letting her go all those years. I had been running away from her, running away from the pain of rejection. And not only that, the fear of rejection was still so great, I was running from my current creative dreams. That day, my head began spinning. Could I go back for her? For that girl I've left dead on the battlefield of my life? How could I, after so many years of rejecting her? I paced my room for a few more minutes, and then slowly, something shifted. I picked up the phone and I called a good friend. That night, we drove to the beach. I've always had an affinity for the sea. It's where I feel the most alive and peaceful. The stars were out in the clear night sky, and pools of water on the sand held the moon's reflection. I walked alone to the water's edge, and quietly I began to talk to that girl. She was angry, hot. I had rejected her and denied her existence for so many years. But slowly, she began to listen. I told her that yes, the dream we had together was over, and I was sorry for running away from that dream. I told her I was sorry for running away from her. I told her I loved her deeply and completely. And I told her that if she wanted, we could create a new dream together. There were a few moments of awkward silence, and then I felt her. She was still inside of me, right inside of me. And I realized that all those years I'd been trying to forget her, to let go of her, to surrender her passions, when what I really needed to do was embrace her. In order to let go of the pain, I had to accept it, allow it, and integrate it and my past self into who I was now. Killing her had done nothing for me. It was only by having the strength and courage to give her my love and bring her back to me that I could stop letting the shattered dreams of my past rule my dreams in the present. That night, I slept properly for the first time in many weeks. And when I woke up the following morning, I knew just exactly what to do. For so many years, I had played at the edges of a creative career. I told myself it was unrealistic or I'll get around to it one day, but I was lying to myself. The truth was, I had been so afraid to feel the rejection of my passion again that I sidelined every opportunity that came my way. This is what happens when we cut ourselves off from our passions in an attempt to protect ourselves from pain. Because we've been hurt, we try to stay safe by remaining wherever feels comfortable, even if that comfort is actually preventing us from accessing potential joy. But without risking pain, we prevent ourselves from growing. And the irony is that by holding ourselves down to ensure we don't fall, we actually create far more pain in the long run. When we go outside of our comfort zones and risk falling, it opens up a whole new world of purpose, excitement, and engagement. Realizing this was difficult, but very liberating. A year after that morning, I quit the job I hated and then was making a living from writing, which is my other great creative passion. It wasn't easy. Facing down every objection my mind could throw up about why I should go back to what was familiar, it was challenging and sometimes exhausting, sometimes even hot like hell. To this day, I've had my writing rejected more times than I can count. But with each rejection, she's there. I hold her close. I tell her I love her. Together, we dance. Then we begin again. Now, that's the end of this story. Like I said, I've told this story in the woman's own words. If it has resonated with you, if you are passing through, have passed through this kind of situation, or you know somebody who is passing through this kind of situation, then this is the time to begin to heal. Not by running away, but by letting go, by accepting the pain, by analyzing it, by integrating it into who you are at the moment. Until I come your way again, this is Morning Vibes with Dr. Jerry the First. This program is powered by Topitup Media and Communication, Nigeria. All rights reserved. Thank you for listening to this broadcast today. I know you have been blessed. And because you have been blessed, help us to get others blessed. Share this broadcast to your friends on your social media sites: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google+, Instagram, Snapchat, whichever you belong to. Share. Sharing is caring, and loving is also caring. Also, subscribe to our channel, and right beside the channel subscription is the bell. Okay, click on that bell so that we can send you notification whenever a new broadcast is made. We have our Facebook page. Also, like us on Facebook. And you can also read the text. If you want to read this text, please visit our blog. The links to our blog and to our Facebook page are right down here in the description box. Also, drop us comments. We'd like to know what you think about the subject matter, about this program in its entirety. Give us ideas. If you want us to speak on anything, mention it, write it for us, and we will prepare and speak on it. Have a nice day.